University. And one of the African-American male basketball players, we just kind of crossed paths one day on campus, and I could tell something was bothering him, and it was shortly after one of the other similar incidents had happened. I can't remember specifically which one, and sadly there have been a number of them, but something had happened and it was weighing very heavily on him. So I invited him to come to my office, and the thing that struck me more than anything was when he said, "I'm dealing with this, but I don't feel like I can talk about it." And so that hurt, because I was trying to figure out what is it about the environment that you feel you can't talk about it. And so that's one of the first things I want to say. And you know, all of you that serve as coaches, one of the important things that you do is that you create and develop very close relationships with your athletes. And to me, that's where you start building upon moving to conversation. So first of all, those relationships that you're already building and have developed with your players. But what I want to suggest is that you create the environment where anyone that needs to have a space to talk, that the environment is there, and you know, he or she can feel comfortable coming to you in the setting and being able to just open up and share. And that's not something that's easy for someone to do unless they feel that the environment is safe to do so. So create an open and safe environment so that difficult conversations can be had. And I know that sometimes we immediately want to say, you know, I know how you're feeling, I understand, but we can't. I actually had a quote that I had posted on my Facebook page, and I want to see if I can share that with you really quickly. Here it is. And it's a quote from Ben Franklin. And he said, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are." And to me, that was really powerful because it speaks volumes. And I think if you have watched some of, you know, what's happening around the country, even, you know, in other places around the world, where people that may not look like me or look like George Floyd are actively engaged in being there and being supportive and saying, "I know that I don't know how this makes you feel and what, you know, this has done to you and impacted you, but I want you to know that I'm here with you." And so I think that that's, you know, important. I may not be able to say, "I know how you feel," or "I understand," but I want you to know I care about you and I'm here to support you and be here with you. So listening, validating those feelings, although I can't say I know how you feel, but I can validate the fact that you have these feelings about it. So listen, allow people the space to talk and share. But, you know, as I said, initially it has to be the relationships and creating a safe and comfortable environment. So when, you know, one of your athletes is dealing with some issues, he or she can feel comfortable coming to you and being able to share those feelings. And then, you know, once the athlete shares the feelings, okay, what do we do about this? Because yes, it's good to listen and talk, but then there needs to be, you know, some kind of conversation about what do we do with this? How can we move forward? And how can we as a collective body, you know, standing side by side, arm in arm, how can we help to address the issue? You know, what can I do? Yes, I may be sitting here in my home in Anderson, and I might feel like that this thing is a whole lot bigger than I am. but collectively, we can come together and come up with some ideas, develop some plans, figure out how can we make a difference and what can we do to help change things for the better. I was looking at somebody's quote that said, all lives won't matter until all lives matter. So that's an important thing to remember. We're all in this together, and it's going to take all of us, no matter what we look like and where we come from, but it's going to take all of us to be able to make this this place better for everybody. And so just want to reiterate that all of you as coaches play an important role. And as I said, because you have that relationship with your athletes. And so sometimes you may be one of the first individuals that they come to and they feel comfortable, sharing and talking. And so make yourself available, create the environment, and be willing to listen, validate, and also, be open to conversation. And then, working with them, create groups, bring people to the table to have some dialogue to try to create and come up with plans. So that's kind of all I wanted to say. And like I said, I really, when David reached out to me, the first thing I thought about was that young man that came to my office that day. And it broke my heart that he said he felt like he couldn't talk to anybody about how he was feeling about what had happened. So let's, first and foremost, create environments where, any and all of our athletes feel comfortable coming to us and being able to talk about how they're feeling about what's going on. And then, just kind of taking it from there one step at a time. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers, but we can be open to working together and, just trying to be there and, do what's within our power to help make things better. That's about all we can do at this point. And, hope and pray that, things do get better and we don't find ourselves, having to come back to the table and have these kind of conversations, again and again in the future.
No, absolutely. Dr. McAdams, I really thank you for coming on. Does anyone have any questions they want to maybe ask Dr. McAdams? She's done a lot of things with student affairs and diversity. Does anyone have anything they might want to ask her before we obviously let her get back to her evening? Anyone? Okay. Well, Dr. McAdams, I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, it was really good seeing you. And
you will.
Obviously, I'm glad that you that you moved on from Anderson, but I know you're taking your talents to bigger and better things. So
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So thank you again for coming on and sharing with us.
And like I said, I know I don't have all the answers, but hopefully those will be, a few simple suggestions and some ideas that maybe folks can take back and hopefully be able to make some differences. So thank you for the time and I wish you all well. Great to see you, and please take care and stay healthy and well.
Thank you again.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. You too, Dr. McAdams.
All right. Bye-bye.
So obviously, I really do appreciate Dr. McAdams coming on and sharing with us. So hopefully, that not to lose sight of what we're in, but maybe we can get a little bit of an escape thinking about some basketball and things like that during this time. So just wanted to obviously appreciate the coaches being on, the administrators. I don't see Kevin yet, but he told me I got caught up with his president and would be here as soon as possible. So if he jumps in the middle of it, I guess that's what'll happen. But I'm going to turn it over to Adam Gordon with Rising Coaches. And just a quick word for any of you that don't know about Rising Coaches is, it's an organization that's basically built on community relationships and networking, I believe. Is that right, Adam? Those three?
Yeah.
Development, community relationships, development. And I just think that, especially in my career, getting to build community with people that are truly either in the same trenches as you or a little bit ahead of you or maybe even behind you, I think has been really cool, getting to not only get to know them, but get to build relationships with them and, relationships that'll last far beyond when our coaching careers ever end. So I think, and then obviously the development part, they don't just introduce you to people, they help you grow as a coach by putting you in front of sessions and, um, you know, talks and webinars and giving you the ability to have platforms just like this one. So I really appreciate Adam and everything Rising Coaches has done. And, obviously if you're not a member or, and you don't have to be a young coach to be a member. Adam's got guys all the way up to the professional ranks that are members. So I know he can, maybe talk a little bit more about. But without further ado, that's enough of me. I'm going to turn it over to Adam, and he's going to kind of introduce our panelists and everything for tonight. So.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for putting this together and organizing this, which you've done here with the 3-level panel over the last, 4, 5, 6 weeks has really been incredible. So kudos to you, David, and appreciate you having me on to help moderate. Before we get started, I do just want to say real quick, tomorrow night we are hosting a town hall meeting along with Ryan Price for Coaches Stand for Social Justice. So hopefully you guys can make that. That'll be at 8 Central Standard Time, same time as this here tonight. So if you want information on that, you can find it on our Twitter page or Instagram, or you feel free to shoot me a chat here in the Zoom session. So, okay, for tonight, pretty cool here what David set up. We've got some mock interviews. I'm going to go ahead and first introduce the candidates. So first one is Amorrow Morgan. Amorrow is the associate head coach at South Alabama. Amorrow is looking very dapper tonight in his gray suit. And so what David's done here is he's kind of created a scenario for what jobs these guys are interviewing for. Amorrow is interviewing for the University of Atlantic Peach Jammers. School's in Augusta, Georgia. It's a public institution. Lower admission requirements. Don't tell the AD that. It's in the SoCon, so a 1-bid league. The enrollment is 15,000. And the reason for the opening is the previous coach left for a Power 5 job after an NCAA bid and 3rd NCAA bid in the last 5 years. They had it rolling. Let's see what else. School broke ground on a new locker room, player lounge in the spring of 2020, and it's scheduled to be open in the spring of 2021. It is one of the top jobs in the SoCon. So good luck, Amorrow. Sounds like a good one. And then we got chriscapko. Chris is the assistant coach at USC. And Chris is interviewing for Magnolia State University, the Mudcats. David really got creative with the mascots here. The Mudcats are in Jackson, Mississippi. It's a public university, lower admission requirements again. I don't know why David's not showing any love to higher academic schools, but that's all right. Conference USA, 1-bid league, 12,000 students. Reason for opening: previous coach retired after 12 years, 0 postseasons in the last 5 years, after 5 postseasons in the first 7. The school will open a brand new practice facility in the fall of 2020, and it's a top 4 job in Conference USA. So those are the candidates, and those are the schools and the situations that they're interviewing for. And we are joined by 2 athletic directors that we are very fortunate to have. Is Kevin on yet, David? I'm going to introduce him regardless. We have Matt Hogue.
I don't see him yet, but
that's all right. We have Matt Hogue here with us. Matt, we appreciate you being here tonight. He's the athletic director at Coastal Carolina. So welcome, Matt. And Kevin Young will be joining us shortly. He's the assistant athletic director for external affairs at Stephen F. Austin. So those are our candidates. Those are our athletic directors and administrators. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt to start the interviews. And then I think, David, am I going to wrap it up at the end and then throw it to you, or whatever? Yeah. We'll figure that part out.
Yeah.
Matt, take it away, man. Appreciate you being here.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. And everybody hear me okay? Just make sure you can hear me clearly. Appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone tonight. Certainly, David, thanks for reaching out, and Adam, for all you guys are doing to advocate and and help develop coaches in the great game of basketball for sure. I think I would just kind of start out tonight. I guess, does it really matter who we go with first? Is that just start with one of the two coaches? So we'll start with Amorrow. He was introduced first. So Amorrow, welcome to this interview. I'm glad that you're interested in our position, and kind of the way I like to start things off is certainly when you get to this point, basketball is something that you know well. We know that you know well, the X's and O's, all that type of stuff. We're confident once you get to this stage that those are things that are probably to some extent a given. So, what I'd really like to know is, tell me more about what you think differentiates you from other candidates in terms of your not just your skill set with the game, but you as a person. What do you feel like differentiates you?
First off, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to interview for a dream job of mine. For some time, it's been a job since I've jumped into the profession that I wanted, from year after year, traveling to Augusta for the Peach Jam and just driving by the campus. It's a beautiful campus, and I'm excited for the opportunity today. But some of the things that I think differentiates me just from, your everyday coach, it's just maybe my story, my background, just where I'm from and how I've been battle tested along the way. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised. That's home for me. Cool story, just about, just my dynamic and where I've been. I would like to say one of the quality traits that I have is been blessed to work for some guys that have taught me how to do more with less. And some of the places that I've been, living in smaller areas, rural areas, whether it's, Arkadelphia, Arkansas, whether it's Pocatello, Idaho, where I played. I was a student assistant there, whether it's Hogue, Germany, where I played professionally. Also coached, in some smaller towns as well as Springfield. But living in a place similar to Augusta, like where I am right now in Mobile, I just think just me being well-rounded, just all these places that I've been just throughout my career, I think have really helped mold me into the coach that I am. Starting off at the lower levels, I think that's been a major, major plus for me in my career, just being battle tested every day, having to be thrown off into, a budget meeting where when I was 25 and I just hopped out of college, professional basketball, I knew nothing about, whether it was a scheduling meeting, whether it was organizing travel, and whether it was just doing all the things that it takes to have a successful basketball program. I think being at the lower levels has been a benefit of mine, just preparing me, having to do every single scouting report in 30-game season plus postseason, just being battle tested every day, just being challenged as a player, being the guy who you think, your stuff might not stink, and now you're at the point where you're washing laundry, you're mopping floors, you're driving bands, you're doing study hall, you're tutoring, you're the tutor, just being at all these lower levels where I had the opportunity to basically sharp those tools in my toolbox. And I think that's what differentiates me. Being in some places like Nickel State and Thibodaux, Louisiana, where resources, we might not have had those compared to other teams in the league. But problem solving is what we had to do. And we're in a no excuse business. And I think just my makeup and where I've been has helped me learn to problem solve, don't complain, don't perform, and just try to figure out the best way to adapt.
I appreciate that, and obviously a very varied experience that's going to serve you well, no question. Let's talk a little bit about your demeanor as you run a practice, as you go through the day-to-day grind of making your team better. And when it gets to a point where you've got to challenge one of your student athletes, or perhaps make demands of them, which we all know that happens in the practice environment as much as anything. What's your demeanor when you do that? How do you approach that interaction?
Well, with intensity, because I believe that that's what's going to be required in order for you to win, tough, high-level basketball games where you're in environments that are extremely loud. Whether it's a 6,000 seat arena or 15 to 20,000 seat arena, where guys might not be able to hear you. You know, that intensity will show in those moments. So I try to make sure that's who I am and what I bring every single day. I think the most important thing with it all is just building those quality relationships with those young men, like over time. Starts in the recruiting process. You know, getting to know them, getting to know their family, getting to know they have pets, you know, the things that they like to do, the things that they shouldn't do, you know, just how we can help them grow. So when they get here, they already know and trust me and understand how much I care about them. So if my voice raises or if my intensity shows at certain times, that doesn't become a distraction, that doesn't bother them, that isn't an adverse situation for them that they can't handle, that they understand where I'm coming from and I mean no harm. And they know that, you know, I'm coming from a loving place, but as a competitor, you know, they understand what we're trying to accomplish. So just with my everyday approach and practice, tons of intensity, making sure that we're organized, making sure that guys understand the importance of urgency and being places on time, running to different spots, the timing and the spacing of execution, just trying to teach them all the things that could be important for them later on in life.
So obviously, once you move into the head coaching chair, you know, it's as much as it's about building your team, developing your team, molding your young men. It's also about, you know, having different constituencies that you now have to work with and mesh with. Those could be folks obviously within the institution. You know, here at our particular institution, we've got a lot of boosters and we have a lot of folks even maybe in a board of trustees role. Talk a little bit about how you would go about fostering those relationships with folks that obviously want to see success, but maybe sometimes aren't as locked in on the process.
Well, coming from a program like South Alabama, where I've witnessed, you know, loyalty just from our fans and our supporters and our boosters, and I know that you all have that there. You know, with you breaking ground on, you know, within your new facilities with, you know, your weight room and your players lounge, that's just showing and proving that your fans and your supporters are dedicated to the program. So, you know, my first couple of days on the job, I would make sure, and all throughout my time there, that I do everything in my power for me and my staff to build strong quality relationships with those guys. Try to get, you know, a list of people that you think that I should contact and reach out to them and explain to them my vision and why I want to make sure that this program continues to keep heading in the right direction and the things that I have planned for helping this program elevate itself to being a top 25 program in all of America. And just letting them know, I understand, you know, their love for their university, and I understand, you know, their loyalty to their university, and just asking questions on what I can do to help, what they would need me to do to help. What are some of the things that they didn't like from the previous staff? What are some of the things that they love from the previous staff? And just try to take all of those things and do the best that I can. But also throughout my time there, do a great job of making sure that, you know, it's an open door policy to any of them. If they want to come by the office, they want to come by practice, I would love for them to really have the opportunity to get to know our players, to give them opportunities for once they graduate, moving forward. But I just want them to know that it's a huge family here, and whatever you would need me to do, I'm willing to do to make sure we can fundraise, continue to help enrollment, and continue to help this program grow.
So there's a lot of different things that are pulling student athletes today. You have you know, mental health concerns is something that I think has become more of an issue in the past 3 to 4 years. Probably was always there, but certainly has come to the forefront. And then also another one of the things going on right now is we're about to embark on kind of a new world in terms of name, image, and likeness, and what those opportunities could afford someone. And so how do you handle a situation where, let's say, you know, your best player has struck an endorsement deal, and, you know, he maybe didn't show up to practice one day because he had to go fulfill the endorsement deal. How do you address that situation?
Well, you know, I would try to address it on the front end. This is something unprecedented. We haven't quite witnessed it or seen it, not quite knowing to what extent or what extreme something could occur. However, if someone were to miss practice or randomly have something that they felt that was more of a priority, then in our program, there will probably be, responsibility, or there will probably be accountability where I would have to use some sort of discipline factor to fix that, whether it's, them not playing but whatever it is from day one. In our first meeting on the year, this upcoming season, I would make sure that's addressed. I would make sure we discuss, people are going to be reaching out to you. People are going to be contacting you for endorsement deals. People are going to try to do things and try to help you, grow your brand and improve your brand. However, we have to make sure that we have certain guidelines that we follow. We have, if there's something that you have that you feel like you have to go do, I would probably need you to reach out to us and set up an appointment. Make sure we know ahead of time, a week or two ahead of time, to make sure things go smoothly. But as for anything like just sudden, I think that there should be consequences and repercussions for those. But at the same time, if it's a first-time offense, that's something that we can discuss, we can talk about, and something that we can work towards. But just in our first meeting, I'll make sure that we have those necessary guidelines in place to make sure that the guys understand that us winning games and you graduating from the university will always be priority number one.
And you mentioned graduation, and Coach, obviously that's what we're all invested in. Number one is to get these young men across the finish line. We have great support here at Peach State in terms of our academics, our advisors, and the investment they put in. What role will you take with them and working with them to make sure we achieve academic success?
It's very important to me. It's always been since I decided to go. Well, since I was in college, when I was in college, before my father he left this earth, he promised me that I would make sure that I finished my college degree. Although my goal was to be a professional basketball player at that time, he made sure that I promised him that I would. And once I did so, I understood the importance of making sure that you give yourself options. And that's something that I'll make sure that I explain to our student athletes from the moment that they step foot on campus, that you have to make sure that you take advantage of your everyday approach to make sure that when you leave here, you leave with a piece of paper. Unless, you're able to forego and play in the NBA, but other than that, we need to make sure that you do everything to make sure that you leave here as a graduate. However, what we'll do is my academic plan and how we'll do things is, from when I would get the job, immediately I would, sit down and talk with the academic advisor and see what guys are at risk from the returners, and see, which assistant coaches I feel like would have the most time to be able to dedicate and give those guys, if they are higher risk guys. Just trying to see the state of the program, just trying to see what our overall GPA is. And then from there, I would move on and putting our plan in action. And what there would be is all three of our assistants plus our ops. I would split up our team just throughout. So, each guy would probably have somewhere around 4 to 5 guys. And with that being said, depending on who I could trust the most within my staff, one would have the higher risk guys, another would have, medium risk, and then, the ops would probably have, a couple of walk-ons, because this load is tough. But one thing that I've done, just because of the schools that I've been at, that's really, really helped me, although we'll have, academic support within our institution, is just make sure that each of our coaches, from the moment our guys step on campus, the first thing that they need to do is before the first day of classes, those guys come by the office, and we have already printed off a calendar, and it's a blank calendar just from August all the way through December for the first semester. And we're going to print off each of their syllabi for each of their classes. And then from there, they're going to write down every assignment. They're going to write down every paper, every quiz, every exam. And we're going to have that. And they're going to have a copy as well in their notebook that they'll carry with them. And we'll have academic meetings once a week. And those will be on Sundays. And with those academic meetings, we'll talk about what just happened this past week and what's to come. And just making sure that we're helping that academic advisor stay on top of them. But then on top of that, show them that not only do we care about wins and losses, that we're also just as invested into their academics. And by us doing that, by, us doing things like that, I know that that's going to be a foolproof plan for our guys to be successful. And I take the graduation rates extremely personal.
So another question: if I contacted your compliance officer and said, "Tell me what kind of guy Amorrow is. What's he going to bring to the table when he deals with the NCAA compliance person?" Well, what will they say?
Say he's inquisitive. They'll say he has a lot of questions. They'll say that he's very dialed in. He's very focused. He's very loyal to his head coach. However, he's very in tune with the rules, and the stuff that he doesn't know, he's not afraid to ask. And they'll know that, I follow the rules, that I'm someone that's trustworthy, someone that is loyal, someone that's hardworking, trying to make sure that I continue to improve and get better with those things. But they would say he's definitely someone that you can trust run your program.
Lastly, we have a successful program here. Our last coach moved on to bigger and better things. How do you continue to maintain our level of success right out of the box?
Right away, I got to make sure these really good players that Coach Jacobs brought in, I got to make sure that we keep them. So we'll have a team meeting right away, and they'll understand the culture that that we'll have. I'll ask questions on the culture that you already have established. Then on top of that, we'll have individual meetings because, as we know, this transfer deal right now is somewhat of an epidemic. Mm-hmm. Kids, when coaches leave, kids are tending to leave. So I would just let them know how invested I'm going to be in helping them achieve their goals and dreams on a day-to-day, and just letting them know that I'm someone that can help them get to their goals and dreams, and someone that they can trust. And then from that moment on, if we were to lose a couple guys, or if the team were to stay in place, I would definitely, with us having 2 scholarships available, I would definitely hit the ground running to make sure that we can fill those scholarships with quality guys and missing pieces to make sure that we can elevate the level of play, not only from winning conference championships, but getting to the point where we can consistently win a game or 2 in the NCAA tournament every year. And that would be the plan. And that would be our goal. From the moment on that I would step foot on campus, they will understand that this is going to be a work zone, a zone that we're going to absolutely do everything we can in our power to outwork every program in the country. It's going to be a zone of humility. It's going to be a zone of grit. It's going to be a zone of toughness and accountability. It's definitely going to be a zone of discipline where we're going to make sure we do things the right way, not just within basketball, but also in the everyday walk of life. And I think if we can help these young men just understand the importance of being punctual, understand the importance of just being respectful to their professors and their teachers and everyone that they come across, and doing things the right way and being honest and truthful, I think all of those things will carry over to the floor. And with that being said, I think it's a great chance that we can continue the success, but actually, take it to another level.
All right, Coach, we really appreciate your time, and perhaps we'll be talking further as things go forward. And please say hello to Mr. Riley for me.
I will do that. I appreciate you. It was fun.
Great job. Matt, do you want to go ahead and continue and go straight into Chris, or David, do you want to do a little feedback in between? What are your
Whatever
thoughts?
Matt wants to do. Matt, do you want to give him more feedback now, or do you want to go straight into Chris and then go from there?
Why don't we do Chris, and then we can go from there?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, Coach, we've got an opening, and obviously, as you know, you're very interested in this position. It's an important time for us to try and get things kind of moving in the right direction. We've had some success in the past here at Magnolia State, but not as much as we'd like to have had lately. So it's a time to hit the reset button and kind of change our culture a little bit and get things moving in the right direction. So what are the core principles that you will bring to the table to help us get that done?
Yeah, and Matt, appreciate you having me. The core principles for me, starts with my staff and everything, with my expectations from my staff down to my players. It starts with character. First thing I want is high character kids. Right underneath that, high character kids who care who care about being good, care about excelling, who care about doing things the right way on and off the floor. The third thing would be about respect towards other people, respect for the people around them, respect for their teammates, respect for their classmates on campus, respect for the administration. And the last thing would just be humility. I want kids who are humble, who are happy to be there, who want to be there, who want to get better for the right reasons, who, when they do attain a certain level of success, they're accepting of why they've attained that level because of other people, because of the work they've put in, and just kids who are there for the right reasons and want to be in my program and want to build continuity and want to stay there for the right reasons.
So we have a very good women's basketball program here at Magnolia State, as you know, a lot of success. So they require a lot of attention as well, and certainly the same type of support. So what would be the approach you would take to build that relationship, especially as a newcomer, with what is a very successful program, and you guys share basically the same area within our new arena as well?
Yeah, I think that goes to my core principles and just, the humility and respect and just wanting to learn from them. Obviously, they've set a good tone for success and how things can be done and how you can accomplish certain things. So one of my first things upon trying to meet everyone on campus would be to try to meet the head women's coach and his assistants or her assistants and try to see what they've done to build their certain level of success, the type of kids they brought in, where they've recruited, the level of student they brought in, how they've built relationships with their booster club, how they've gotten student support, how they've engaged the community, and just try to learn what they've done. Obviously, they set a good blueprint for how to succeed there. And my goal, one of my first goals when I got the job would be to try to build a relationship with them and just try to follow the blueprint that they've already set.
So one of the things that's very prevalent in our business right now, and particularly in football and men's basketball, is obviously the transfer climate, which has become so much more active than it was before. And certainly there's positives and negatives to it philosophically, but how do you go about just the process of it? How do you systematically kind of because it's here to stay, and we know there are going to be kids that move both in and out, but what's maybe the tactical approach that you would use toward that?
Yeah. So, and it's a great question, and you're right. To me, it's the biggest epidemic's not the right word, because I don't want to even, bring it to those levels, but it's the biggest challenge facing, I think, coaches, college coaches in every sport, is trying to build continuity within your roster with all the moving parts that you have. So two things. One, I think as we learn more about this one-time transfer rule, I have questions regarding it now. If you graduate, can you still transfer, whatever it may be? One of the first things I want to do, and this goes back to my core principles, is character. I want to find high character kids who are humble and are at the school or at our school because they want to be there. They're here at Magnolia State because this is where they want to be, not because they felt like they owe me something, not because they feel like they're better than this. Is to try to find, and it's really hard to do, but really try to not only evaluate the player, but really evaluate the kid, and really myself and my staff really try to build relationships, genuine relationships. I know everybody says that, but genuine relationships, and do as much homework as we can on each individual kid and family that we bring in our program. So now when we can coach them how we want to coach them, and when they do have success, the relationship is already there, that they're like, you know what, this is where I want to be. I want to build continuity within my team. I want to keep kids in my program for 3, 4, 5 years. I want to get them in there. I want to develop them. I want to build even better relationships with them. And I think that's how you build continuity. So that's the first thing, is I think finding, whether it's high school kids or junior college kids, is evaluating the type of person that they are, the situation where they come from. Do they have the track record of being a transfer within high school or a transfer within junior colleges? Have they shown those characteristics? What do people around them think? How have they handled adversity? How do their teachers, how do their athletic directors, how do their principals, what do they think of the kids? So just trying to do as much homework as we can in that regard, and then play into the new transfer rule. If a kid has a one-time opportunity to transfer and there is less incentive to transfer after the first time, maybe that's the direction we go with some of our roster as well. Kids who have already transferred, who now there is less incentive for them to transfer again. So I think some of that is still some of the regulations around that rule will dictate exactly how we move forward with it. But I think it all goes back to character. Character developed not only as basketball players, but as adults, because they're changing throughout their tenure in your program. Developing them as basketball players, and then really trying to enrich that relationship with you have, because a lot of the time when you get a kid in your program, the recruiting process is sweet. You're telling them how you feel about them, how they can help you, but when you have to coach them is when your relationship really comes into play. So trying to really build these relationships. Everyone says everyone does it, but really trying to go to extra length to really build these relationships. So through good and bad, your kids want to stay and you build continuity within your program.
So we had a couple of issues last year with couple players that didn't play as much as they thought they should, and not only did they express that concern, but moreover, we heard from their parents, primarily their father, who was concerned about that. Those are situations that are very difficult to deal with because we struggle in trying to teach how you manage adversity. So how do you intervene in a situation like that, particularly walking into this job where there may be an expectation that all of that changes for them? How do you manage that situation?
Yeah, so the first thing will be, in terms of our players is, one, getting to know them. Two, making sure we have the right kind of guys still in our program, the type of guys who I want to try to win with and who meet our core principles. And then meeting with all the parents. And obviously there would be a feeling out process in terms of where they're at as a player, and then how we round out our team and where all that kind of fits in. But the best thing I think you can do in any of these situations is have an honest conversation with both the player and the parents, and honest conversation in terms of what your expectations for them are, both academically, athletically, socially, on campus, all that stuff, and then seeing if they agree with where we stand on things. The best thing I think I can do as a coach and as the head coach is always be honest with my players, whether they like to hear it or not. Be as honest with them as I can and set the right expectation, and then try to help them grow on that. Just because as of right now I evaluate you this way as a player doesn't mean you can get better and that you're going to be stuck in that role. And it's going to be an ever-changing thing throughout the season too, based on performance, production, how guys do, things like that. But I talked about building relationships with my players. The family and the parents are just as important. I'll be honest with them. Again, they may not want to hear it, but I'm going to give them the most honest and candid answer that I can. And if they don't respect that, then, maybe being at Magnolia State's not the place for them. But I am going to be honest with them. And it's ultimately going to come down to their son and how he performs.
We've had a lot of success raising money and being able to build this new facility, but obviously, fundraising is very important with not having the budget of a Power Five. What is your approach to getting out there and being able to find those extra dollars that help the program develop?
Yeah, so, first thing would be to sit down with you and your expectation on what we need to do. How many buy games? Do we need to play buy games? But the second thing would be to go to our women's program. They're obviously doing well. I'm sure they're drawing well. What are things they've done? Every school I've been at, we've set up a booster club where we've had fundraisers, golf outings. Here at USC, we do a magic event twice a year where we have a dinner both in the fall and the spring. And boosters, donate gifts and things like that. And magicians get up there and we have a meal and, bring our team and allow our team to engage the boosters. But I think the best thing that I can do is just get out there and be visible and be seen and get to know these people and understand what they're giving their money to and what my vision is and what your vision is and what our vision is as an institution. So they know exactly what they're given to and what our core principles are and the type of team we're trying to do. But, not just the women's basketball team, but the football team, see how they're doing it, see how baseball is doing it, try to pick the brains of the other coaches within our athletic department and just try to take a little bit from everybody and then throw my own spin on it and get to know these people as best I can and let them see exactly what we're trying to build and what their monetary donations and stuff like that, how it's going to assist our program and our student athletes and the university as a whole.
So give me an idea of what we will see from Chris when you move into that first chair to run a game from the bench. How will your demeanor be? What will be your, I guess, overall personality?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. Obviously, I haven't been there. So, what I'm saying is what I think I will be. I'm a high energy guy. I have energy all the time. I bring energy in practice all the time right now as an assistant. but I'm not a berater. I'm not a screamer. I would like to think I'm going to be as energetic with my team. I'm going to try to coach them up as best as I can. But I think a lot of that has to be done in practice. I'm not going to be in my guys' face. I think you can coach them without screaming at them or cursing at them or berating them and things like that. But again, heat of the moment, things happen. I'm going to coach them as hard as I need to in that time, or best that I can. But I want to say I'm going to be as calm as possible while coaching my team at the same time. But I don't think you're going to see me up jumping around down in my defensive stance, screaming and yelling. But I'm going to be intense, focused, energetic, and coaching my guys as hard as possible.
And then lastly, we really haven't had a great season in a while. How quickly do you think you can turn things around?
I don't have an honest answer for you. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to set forth the groundwork that we just talked about. I'm going to find my type of guys. I'd like to say I can do it in year one, but I don't know what's left. I'd like to say I can do it in year two, but I do know we're going to get better. We're going to get the type of guys in the program who I believe we can win with. I'm going to get the type of kids in our program who represent our institution proudly, who you guys will be proud of, who our community will be proud of, and we will get better. And we are going to play a certain way. They're going to be tough. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to defend. They're going to play the right way. They're going to play together. And we're going to continue. We're going to work as hard as anybody to evaluate the right prospects for our program, develop them both as people and as basketball players, and then maintain that continuity within our program so we can compete for a Conference USA championship and play in the NCAA tournament.
Coach, I appreciate your time, and perhaps we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, Chris. Well done, Matt. We
Thank you.
appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Do you want to give some feedback? Do you have any thoughts or feedback on Chris?
Sure. And I tried to, kind of mix up the questions for both guys, just so we weren't kind of doing the exact same one. But, for me, and obviously all ADs are different. They have different matrices that maybe they kind of go through or things that they want to know. I'm someone who's maybe a little bit more, from the old school. I think most of my coaches will probably tell you that, I don't send them memos every day. Obviously, if there are things that have to be addressed, we address them. And part of that, I think, if anybody knows anything about our school, some of the coaches that we have have been around a long time and been very successful. So, it's a different type of relationship. So for me, it's really about kind of getting to know the person and really becoming a partnership with them, because we're both ultimately in this together to have success. So, when you get to this stage, and usually, an interview stage is you're going to probably have 3 to 4 individuals that typically would come to campus, probably whittled down from, a larger group at that point. When you get to that stage, I think everybody's, as I said, kind of at the top, everyone's probably sold on what those individuals can do basketball-wise. Their style of play. Maybe that had something to do with how they ended up in your final group. They've been successful. They're coming from a successful program. Whether that's an assistant coach or a head coach. So, you really want to drill down and kind of dig into some of these nuance issues, because the one thing that's going to happen is you're gonna be in my office some, but you're going to be in the compliance office a lot. And you're going to be with the trainers a lot, and you're going to be with strength and conditioning. Obviously you guys know you're going to be around those guys a lot. So what the demeanor of someone is, how well they're going to mesh with the staff we have, and how well they're going to mesh with some of those folks are things that are important to me that I want to know. And then the other issue is, what are the issues out there that are governing our sport and governing our industry? And there's a lot of probably moving faster now than it ever has, in terms of changes and things that can, be helpful to your athletes, but also could be disruptive. So having a good gauge on where those are, where they stand, and how to manage them well, those are important things to know as well. So, I think that's part of the key is how you kind of go deeper into some of those other aspects of working within a department, and then being able to manage some of the outside influences.
Thank you so much, Matt. Amara, before we let you go, Matt, or wrap up your portion, Amaro or Chris, do you guys have any questions for Matt, or were
Sure,
there any
absolutely.
questions that you guys felt like you want to ask him how to better handle or anything like that?
I thought you guys did a great job. I really did.
Thanks. You want to go first, Chris? Go ahead.
I mean, I guess the biggest thing would be just for me, you know, the recommendation you would have from becoming just an assistant coach to becoming an actual candidate. Obviously, each school is different, but, you know, I mean, I think to get to that point where you're seriously considering someone as an actual candidate, you know what I mean? And someone who you think is ready to make that next step as an assistant coach without necessarily the experience. You know, because some people are looking specifically for someone who does have that. But if you're saying you're not looking for anyone who necessarily has head coaching experience, what is it about that or a candidate who would catch your attention, even though they don't have that experience?
I think number one, you're going to be taken by the fact that someone's had a successful journey, if you will. You know, it's not necessarily always about what happened at the school you're coming from. That may be the thing that kind of opens the door and gets you acquainted with someone. But I think, you know, I like to do a lot of research myself, and I'm probably maybe a little different than some of my colleagues in that regard. That doesn't mean that phone calls that come as recommendations from obviously people in our business and coaches that are well respected, all those things matter. But I like to see, okay, has there been a consistency of success? You know, even if that success was happening, you know, at a junior college or, you know, some place that maybe is not as prominent on the map, those things still matter, because what it tells me is that there's a track record there, and I'm a big believer in that, because I think that kind of carries consistency across all different situations. So I really like to dig into that a lot. I think those are the things that can really help somebody stand out, is when you've had that consistent success, and you can see that someone's been building forward. But the reality is, I think in our business, because everything's moving so quickly, is sometimes you do need to have that person that can kind of push the door open for you, or can advocate for you, or help you get, you know, kind of get on the radar, because that can sometimes be the most difficult part. You know, but that's why, you know, exercises like this are so important, because now you start developing that network, or expanding that network that, you know, comes into play down the road. So those are just kind of some general thoughts. You know, and you have to, you know, depends on what you're looking for, or what a school's looking for. You know, I think in both of these scenarios, David did a good job. They were completely different types of scenarios. And that may be something that comes into play. Maybe that's what leads you more to a head coach versus maybe an assistant coach. You know, so you sometimes never really know until you get to that point. You have to go through the search, but you know, those are a few of the highlights.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Matt, I've heard unbelievable stories about your story itself, and just where you come from with, you know, my head coach spending some time there with you.
Sure.
One of my questions is how do you, because of your story and you having a unique background and working your way up to become the athletic director there, and having been somewhere where a head coach has been there for some time, how closely do you pay attention to the assistants and how they move and how they operate, and what are some of the no-nos or your non-negotiables, or what are some of the things that you feel like is a must-have in order for you to make a hire?
Well, I do spend a lot of time with our assistants, you know, and I think in our situation, obviously with Coach Ellis, he's been around for a very long time, and there's probably more delegation going on there. So, you know, I definitely interact with our assistants a good bit. You know, and I think that's a great question, because as you know, as all of you know, there's so many different things that assistants are asked to do. You know, sometimes they're asked to kind of be the, you know, the emissary, if you will, to the department on some issues. They might be asked to, you know, go represent the program in some capacity. And I think those are incredible, valuable training opportunities, to make yourself ready to be a head coach. Again, I think for me, if I see someone that, they don't have to be the smartest person when it comes to, knowing everything about a budget, but if they've mastered the details of how it works at that school, for example, I think that's the kind of thing that I like, that's important. I don't feel like I'm having to kind of start fresh to explain a process or explain what we're doing. Kind of staying ahead on those types of details, I think are really important. Anytime that I see an assistant that is really, sort of jumping ahead on the accountability, they're not really waiting for you to say, hey, we need to do this, or I really need you to do it this way. They already understand kind of the ethic of our department, so they go take care of it. And I think that's always a hallmark of someone who's a great coach, whether they're an assistant or a head coach. But a great coach is they're kind of a step ahead of you in terms of being prepared and taking care of, things that come up. Because to a large degree, I mean, we're all in a business where we kind of, put out fires every day to a certain degree. There's not going to be a day where everything just kind of goes perfectly. You've got to find solutions, and I know that's what our staff, we always work to try to do. We try to figure out what yes looks like, but sometimes there's going to be some no's. And I think if you can kind of take that approach, figure out how to show a solution when you come in the door. The thing that will drive me crazy is when I just feel like the problem's just kind of dumped on the plate, and the expectation, well, he'll go fix that for me, or he'll go solve that. Provide some solutions, do your homework ahead of time, have that conversation with the compliance person, have that conversation with the academic advisor, know what options are there. So when it's put in front of me, we can kind of talk through what do we do next, instead of it just sort of being, a problem that now I've got to add to the list of maybe 7 or 8 other ones that have come in the door from other sports or other issues, from the day. So I think those kinds of things are things that stand out to me and stand out in terms of, of what assistants do on a day-to-day basis, because it is a pretty significant, significant amount of work that has to be accomplished. And you mentioned, just for background, you mentioned my role. I actually started out more on the media side and performed broadcasting for many years. At Coastal, among a lot of other things, kind of behind the scenes administratively, both inside the athletic department and even outside the athletic department. So that's probably where my, attention to detail comes from being courtside and seeing a lot of games and watching a lot of, a lot of strategy, and watching how games play out in the final few minutes, and figuring out the philosophies and the identities of teams. It didn't take very long to figure out, okay, this coach or that program, they're all about shutting you down defensively. This game's going to be 50-48, or maybe the next night you're playing somebody that, it's 94 feet all the time, and it's going to be a track meet and 3-pointers raining down and that kind of thing. And one thing that I've always noticed is that, the coaches who really were probably the most successful is they understood how to adapt from not only, one style to the next night, but then also even within the game, being able to adapt. Maybe it's how the officials are blowing the whistle or whatever, and that's more into the tactician side of it and what you do within a game day. But, I watched a lot of those, probably more than my share over the years. And I think it kind of gives me a little bit of a different perspective maybe than some of my colleagues, because I really pay attention to those things. If we have a team that, just the Sun Belt, for example, I think I've got a pretty good feel for, in our league, what you probably have to be successful. That might not necessarily be the case in another league. So, those kinds of things come into play for me specifically, but I appreciate you mentioning that.
Matt, thank you. That was great stuff. As soon as you said broadcasting, it kind of clicked for me. You do have that broadcasting voice still, so I could hear it coming out.
Well, it helps no go down easier sometimes, maybe.
Could I ask one more?
Sure.
How I know. So with your unique background and you being in broadcasting, just working your way up through promotion after promotion, what were some of the things that you would probably tell your younger self, or not necessarily that? What are some of the things that you would tell someone trying to get a promotion or trying to get the next job? And how were you able to have the success and be able to position yourself like you are today?
I think, accomplishing the small things well and consistently, is very important. It could be something as simple as, maybe you're the assistant that your job is to go to the business office and you guys know how this works. You go clear up all the, the receipts or something or whatever from the most recent trip. Doing those things on time in the process that's required and doing them well. That's something that's very important. And I think not being, afraid or unwilling, afraid may not be the right word, but certainly not unwilling to, do the extra stuff. I was presented with a scenario very early in my career. I probably would have been just as happy calling games and doing sports information work, close to 25 years ago. But, I was presented with an opportunity by my AD at the time that, hey, we really need you to shift over into sales. We need to sell sponsorships. That's where we need to bring in more revenue. So you're probably going to have to, if you want to keep doing, being with us here, you're going to probably have to give up, the sports information part, which I really love, still love to this day. So I said, all right, let's take that on. Let's see what we can do. And it opened up a whole nother opportunity for me in terms of, meeting people, networking, bringing, showing some results, bringing stuff in, bringing money in to help us. And I think I've always tried to have that attitude is if there's another opportunity that's there, don't be afraid of it. How you boil that down into the coaching arena, I think is just, being the person that's willing to be there, after practice to work with a kid, being the person that's willing to go the extra mile for, the athlete that might be struggling a little bit academically or whatever might be going on in their life, because I'm a big believer that those things ultimately add up. And I think that, you're going to get opportunities because of it. And that's stuff that'll stand out. And that's also the thing that I think that's why people will want to call on your behalf and reach out and say, hey, this is the person you need to hire.
Thanks again, Matt. That was great.
Sure. And anyone that wants to reach out, feel free. Anytime I'll be happy to have a conversation or, provide some insight to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Okay, before we open it up for questions and comments from everyone else, David asked me to provide some feedback just from the search firm perspective on the two interviews. I'll just say this real quick. As a search firm, it's not really our job to sit through the interviews and decide who gets a job. It's more helping the athletic director figure out who that they're going to interview. Anyways, that being said, I guess I'll start with you, Amorrow, since you went first. First of all, like, how do you think it went? Like, how do you think you did?
I think I did solid. I think I bombed the image and likeness question, but but that's obviously something that we haven't come across quite yet. But still, it's good to kind of spark my interest in probably being more forward thinking in that aspect, because that's something that's definitely gonna be here soon. For
sure, definitely. Were you nervous at all, or you felt like comfortable the whole time?
Yeah, I was nervous to start. That's usually the same when I was a player. Is nervous before a tip. But game time, you just prepare yourself every single day for opportunities like this. So I felt like I was prepared.
So I thought you were like super prepared. You were like well spoken. It was clear that you had a plan for like how you'd run your team. So I thought that all came off really, really good. If I had to I wrote down like what stood out the most in terms of like your values, like if we hired Amorrow, this is like what we would get out of his team. And so like the word for you that I wrote down was disciplined. So I don't know if that's what you want to be known for or whatever, but that's that's the theme that I like heard over and over again. And I guess the other thing that I would say is, if there's any way you can like mix up your tone or take your, like take a deep breath before you answer and be yourself and make it like, this is a big job. I mean, they're hiring you to lead their basketball program. So they want somebody, like, it was very clear, like I said, that you like knew your stuff, but you want to see a little personality come out in this thing too.
Sure.
Like when you talk, he asked about, education and degrees. And when you started talking and telling the story about your father, like that was something that was like personal that like made me sit up and lean in a little bit more because I felt like I was getting to know you a little bit better.
For sure.
So I think it's important, like obviously, like Matt said, you're here because you're a finalist. They love everything about you on paper. When you get to this interview, you got to make sure they love you, the person, and like trust you to lead their whole program. So that would be my one bit of advice, but I thought it was really, really good.
I appreciate that. That was great. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. All right, Chris, what about you, man? How'd you feel about it? I know you just found out you were doing this like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, found out short notice, but glad I did it. Thought I did okay, man. Honestly, after hearing you talk, I thought that was all good stuff. Probably didn't show off enough personality and probably too business-like, I guess, in my responses. But, stuff I felt prepared for. So there are things that I've had just dealings with in my time as an assistant coach, all stuff that I've handled or been in charge of or participated in, things like that. So.
Yeah, for sure. I got very similar feedback for you that I had for Amorrow, like what you just said. Like, I think if you can find a way to make us laugh or, not make us cry, but, tug on our heartstrings a little bit or whatever, that's always great. The word that I wrote down for you, or the thing that I came across the most that you kept talking about, was your relationships with the players and making sure you get the right type of kid. And you define that a little bit, but I think you could, because it sounded like such a key part of what you want to be about is like getting the right fit in terms of your personnel. I think dig in a little deeper. And I even think if you can give examples about like, we had kids like this at USC and they might not have been, the most highly touted dudes, but they were tough. They wanted to be there. They had a chip on their shoulder because they were under recruited. And this is what happened because we had those guys. Right. I think just like, having that bridge from how having the right fit in terms of your personnel is going to translate into the type of team you want, wins and results.
Right.
So, that was what I had for you. So, but again, both you guys did great. I really thought you guys were good. Matt, did I anything that I missed or in terms of that stuff or?
No, I one thing I was just going to mention to Amorrow, he sent me his profile earlier today, which I thought was, we give Chris a pass on that because I know he got called out of the bullpen pretty quickly, but I really appreciated that, and I thought it was very well done. You get a lot of these packets a lot of times, probably in all sports. Really, it's not just basketball, and I thought it was put together where I could absorb it. And if I had to look at it quickly, I wouldn't get too bogged down. The resume stuff was there, which was great, but I really liked the imagery and everything. So I thought that was a really nice, nice approach with your packet.
Appreciate that. We got one of the best ops in the country, man.
I think he's on here.
He's special, man. He really helps our staff in so many different ways.
There should be an award for the ops guys. I don't know, maybe have it at the Basketball Hall of Fame each year or something because they do big work.
Shout out Michael. Just turned his camera on when he heard his name mentioned. Well, thanks again, Matt. And Amorrow and Chris, thank you guys. That was fantastic. Great job. It's not easy to put yourself out there in front of your peers like this. So we appreciate you being willing to do it. And hopefully, you got some reps and hopefully that helps you. I have no doubt you guys will be in that head office sometime pretty soon. So, okay, David, I think it's time to open it up to any general comments or questions from anybody. So I don't know, David, how you usually do it. If you just, people want to jump in, or if you want to raise your hand or jump in the chat.
Yeah, we
do
can.
those three things.
Or go ahead. People can just kind of speak up. Russ.
I'll get it started.
But go ahead, Mike.
Started just like we do on the other ones, but I'll shout out to Adam, and I got to keep the camera off while the big man's going, so he gets the time. But what you did by putting this together, I know the work that Ro put into it, and prepared for it just like a real interview. And I think that's what these are really made for. And I think it's a powerful thing what you guys did by putting this on, and helped him a lot, and obviously all the feedback. So just a general comment to you guys on these life things that we're preparing these guys for is only possible by what you guys are putting on. So I think it's big time.
Thanks, Mike. It's all David.
You still owe me that call though, Adam. I won't
do.
let you get away with that one.
Russ, you had a question. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, this is Russ Williamson at Tennessee State. First off, Morrow and Chris, you guys were spoke like future head coach, or actually current head coaches. You guys were well-spoken, articulated, passionate. You had a vision. Very, very kudos to you guys. You guys did a great job. Dave, great job putting this on. Matt, quick question for you. You threw a curveball at Morrow with the name and likeness, which he had already talked about. If we're in an interview and there's a question asked, and there's not an endpoint to it yet, like we don't know what name and likeness entails yet because it's still in the works. What's the best way to approach that?
I think number one, and I learned this a long time ago, is don't ever be afraid, to say, look, I'm not the expert on that issue, or I don't know about that specific aspect of that issue, or something along those lines. And then, maybe transition from that into the way you see it philosophically. Because one thing that I think, we're all, even myself, and everybody's still trying to figure out where it's all going to go from a technical standpoint or a compliance standpoint. But we all probably have some level of feeling or personal opinion about it, and how we feel it may affect us positively, negatively. So I think regardless of what the issue is, that's usually a good way to kind of transition is, hey, I haven't, it's so new, it's so fresh. I know they're still waiting to, set the actual legislation or what have you. But here's how I think it will impact our game. One thing that I think you hear from a lot of coaches that are outspoken, whether it's the transfer stuff or anything that's going on out there, it's always about you always hear them say, this is how it's going to affect our game, good or bad. So I think that's probably the best way to approach it. The worst thing I think you can do is get to a point where you're maybe getting over your skis a little bit and talking about it when you don't really have a good command of the subject. That probably would be more noticeable than anything else.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, Adam talked about showing some personality, maybe telling a joke or two. How do you balance that in their interview? Obviously, these guys have done a great job preparing. They want to be formal, well-spoken. Is it okay to mix in a joke or two, or what are some other ways that are acceptable in a formal interview to show some more personality?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as Adam pointed out, I think that's a very important trait to have. When you're sitting down with somebody face to face, whenever we kind of get back to that world we used to know, I think that's very important because you want to be able to see that authentic personality. And a lot of times what will happen, and schools do it differently, but when we get down to this point, we've probably put somebody through the ringer. They've probably had a visit with, maybe the president, or they've had a visit with a board member. The day is so jam-packed usually, or the couple of days when you're going through an interview process like that a lot of times by the time you get back into my office, you're going to want to crack a few jokes and kind of relax a little bit, So, yeah, I think anything that accentuates your personality and it allows someone in my shoes to be able to see how you're going to interact with your with your players. I think that's important. I think anything like that is only a benefit.
All right. Jonathan had one.
Hey coaches, this is Jonathan Finkel. This is more for Amorrow and Chris. I mean, if Matt, you want to chime in as well. Potentially you guys both look to be head coaches one day. What's something that you look for when you're going to hire an assistant? What are your most important characteristics or skills that you're going to look for when hiring somebody?
Mario, you want to go first, or?
You can go first. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but I just want someone who cares, man, cares about doing a good job, has the self motivation to do the job without me necessarily having to say it for them. For instance, I get in the gym with our guys. Coach Enfield doesn't have to tell me to do that on my own. So someone who just has the self-motivation in them to get better, and I don't have to micromanage anything about the job, that means a lot to me. And worrying about what my staff's doing or things like that. And I think a lot of it comes to hiring someone who I know and have a real personal relationship with, and I know that they'll be able to take care of the task at hand without me having to micromanage it, but knowing that they care enough about doing the job and doing it the right way. They care enough about our program. They care enough about the kids. They care enough about winning and succeeding and doing things the right way that they're going to do things and they're going to do the best they can, just because it's in them to do that without me necessarily having to, really instill that in them or just micromanage them through that. I actually try to do that when we're hiring our GAs or we're hiring our ops or a video or someone like that, people who I know are going to take it upon themselves to enhance the program because it's in them to do that, because they care enough to do that.
Great answer, Chris. Great answer. For me, I would say some of the same things that he just said. Also, I think trying to find a unique value, just, every staff, the basics are, you want to be able to recruit. And, for you to separate yourself in that field, you got to be elite. Like he said, you got to have a motor. You got to really, really work. You have to be willing to connect every single dot. You have to be willing to know everyone in their family, pets and all, just grandparents, and try to build as many close relationships as you can in order to separate yourself in that regard. Then on top of that, just looking for someone well-rounded that's not a one-trick pony, somebody that's willing to do, a little bit of everything. And if they can't, they're eager to learn how to do a little bit of everything. I think that those things are important. If, just working for a dude like I work for, Coach Riley, he takes pride in his staff being like the second youngest staff in college basketball. And I think that goes hand in hand with what Chris was saying. Like, we have some young, hungry individuals who really want to show and prove every single day. Wake up with a chip on their shoulder, have the energy and time to be able to do so. And don't, like, it's pretty cool because it's kind of competitive throughout our office where, some days we're competing on who gets to the office first, who's in the office, a little bit later, who can bring this player to the table, who can get in the gym and let coach know we had this guy in the gym or whatever it might be. I'm looking for guys who would, basically fit those same characteristics that I have. And I say lastly, character, for me to have a high character, bunch and group of kids, I think it's important that our staff has high character as well, because how can we identify if we're out here wilding or, not focused and we're preaching those same things to them every single day. So for me, if I got the opportunity, those would be some things that I would certainly look for.
Great. Thank you.
Coach G.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing tonight?
Great. Doing
Good.
great.
Right, good to hear, man. Thanks for having me. First off, second, this is my first go round with this group. So again, thanks for having me. I'm enjoying it. Couple of questions for Matt, and then I got one for Amorrow and Chris. But for Matt, you said it's okay to mix in jokes or whatnot. I guess, is that kind of based on the AD in particular, like who you're dealing with? Because Like I'm an energy type guy. That's what I feed off of, and I want to show that, but it's going to be genuine when I do, because that's how I operate. And so my question would be, is there such thing as too much, I guess, or it just depends on who you're dealing with?
I think it's probably both. I think you can always oversell it, and it is important maybe in the bigger picture to do your homework too on someone in my shoes. Figure out everybody's gonna have a contact that connects back. Obviously Amorrow's head coach Richie and I know each other pretty well. He worked at our school for a while, so we're in such a small fraternity when it comes to that. You could probably get a read. You can do a scouting report. That's what you guys do very well. So that helps because you'll know, hey, is this guy really just a hardcore kind of by the book? If I'm sitting with you interviewing you, I probably will have on a jacket, but I probably won't have on a tie. That's just not really my thing. Those are reserved for board of trustee meetings and press conferences. So I'll wear one at your press conference. But I think you do your homework on that and know kind of the personalities of the people you're going to be meeting with, and then you just kind of use your instincts. That'll guide you, as to where you can go. Hopefully, the person doing the interviewing, when you're talking with that AD, they give you some signals kind of how to do that. They sort of open the room up, or they maybe lighten the load a little bit, and maybe they tell a joke or something like that. So a lot of it's just kind of reading it and then getting a feel for who you're going to be meeting with.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. And
sure.
For Morrow and Chris, maybe different questions, maybe something y'all have heard before, but what were your first coaching jobs at any level? Not just college, but at any level, what were your first coaching jobs?
I was a GA at Marshall. So Donnie Jones was the head coach at Marshall, and I was a GA, and it was a great experience. I actually had worked on Wall Street the year before that, so saved up a little bit of money in my pocket, worked. I think our stipend was like $4,000 for the year, so we made about $400 a month over 10 months. And Donnie was great, man. He gave me a lot of autonomy. It's really when I got kind of my hands dirty with working kids out. I was working guys out all the time. But at the same time, I think Amorrow might have talked about, I was washing practice uniforms. I was sweeping floors. There was construction going on in a new locker room in the facility. I was sweeping the floor and then mopping it because there was dust that would get on the floor every day. But I was in staff meetings. I was in recruiting meetings. I was working guys out. I was doing film. I was helping with scouts. It was just a great experience for me. And, people say it all the time, not to worry about the money. That will come. And it's true. It helped lay the foundation for me as I moved through the business. And it was just an unbelievable opportunity that I was grateful for, man. And, but that's where I got my start at.
Cool.
It's big time. Yeah, for me, I jumped off in as a Division II assistant. Luckily, one of my former assistant coaches basically just got me the job. I just finished playing. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go back and play or I wanted to jump off in the profession. And he let me know if I did. Similar to what Chris said, it would be for little to no money. And University of Illinois Springfield, assistant coach at the Division II level. Only made $9,000 for the year. Bunked up with a bunch of people, tried to figure it out, got hired in August, so didn't really get a chance to recruit at all. So for me, it was a huge learning experience, just trying to figure it out and just completely off just being relentless and passionate, just trying to figure out a way to make it happen, like make something shake, do my best to learn on the fly, talk to my mentors and see what I can learn and how I can help these dudes figure it out. So for me, it was really cool because I got a chance to experience a lot of those things like he just discussed in year one, just from scouting reports. And those are the things that as a player I witnessed coaches do, but it was my first time doing it. And it was in a really good college basketball Division II league, like the best probably at that time in the country. So just trying to figure out how to game plan and strategize. And then on top of that, bring players to the table and try to do my best to just help my coach, look the best way he could. So it was great for me. It really helped me moving forward to my next job, for sure.
Word. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think
Hey,
we have
Coach.
one more. Oh, go ahead, Kareem.
Matt, this question is for you. What does it look like in your eyes as far as the process for a legitimate candidate that has no pre-existing relationship with you, like trying to get you know you, trying to connect with you, maybe some former guy that you knew called on him. What does it look like for you?
I'm glad you asked that question, because in our industry that drives a lot of what happens when you talk about previous relationships or networking. That's actually something that I don't make any preconceived notions about. If I know someone, or hey, if I ever get an opportunity for this job to open, I'm going to go get so and so. I think I always have a list prepared as I go through. It changes constantly. I probably update it, every month or so, mainly for preparation's sake for every sport we have, because you never know when something could change and you've got to be ready to go make a hire. But I try to continue working on that list as things change. If somebody gets a job, they probably, they get a head job, they're probably not going to be in the market maybe the next time around. I don't make a preconceived choice. That was something that I think long ago I felt like, hey, you go through and you look at, all right, who are solid candidates. Maybe that's being, informed a little bit by a search firm, maybe not. But that's not something that I would put a tremendous amount of stock in. I'm probably a little different in that regard. I want to make sure that we've got somebody who is going to be a solid head coach for us and get us where we need to be with our goals and our expectations. It's not just there for me to go take care of a friend, no matter how successful that friend may be. And that's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about through the years.
All right, we have one more question, Matt. I know you had to run. Justin had
Sure.
actually messaged it in a couple minutes ago.
Hey, yeah, this question is from Matt. So, Matt, is there any type of language or phrases that are common to say that you do or don't want to hear? So you always hear the common phrases or cliches like high character or doing it the right way. I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, what do you think about some of those things?
I mean, we all definitely have a vocabulary. We were joking the other day. I mean, you hear from the NCAA now, they love to use the term guardrails on the name, image, and likeness stuff, or you hear the word pivot, which I always thought used to be what the guy in the post was doing, but now everybody seems to use that terminology. But nonetheless, I think kind of what Adam was saying, all those words, that vocabulary is fine because that's kind of how the way we talk. But I think it's really more about what can you provide as an example or something substantive behind that. So if you say, hey, I want high character guys, make sure that aligns with what the research is going to say about you. Make sure that there's something that you can provide that substantiates that, or maybe go through the process of how you do that evaluation to make sure they meet that, that particular type of character trait. I think that's really the key, because if you fill it out, then the word has more meaning, even if it might be something that a lot of people use. I think one thing that's always important is, just be as genuine as you can. Once you get to that point, you probably have a pretty legitimate shot to get the job, especially if we're going through multiple interviews. I'm not saying there aren't times where somebody maybe, kind of going back to what Coach Kareem mentioned, where somebody maybe has someone in mind, and unfortunately they go through a process that sometimes maybe is not complete. But in a lot of the coaching searches I've been involved with, it's we get down to those 3 or 4. We're pretty sold on probably all of them for one reason or another, and it's how you stand out at that point.
Awesome. Well, Adam, do you want to wrap anything up? Last thoughts? I just was going to thank everyone.
Sure. Well, I had a question that a couple guys have been texting me. I guess we have some pro coaches on the line or in the Zoom call that are curious about, I guess, interested in transitioning back to college. They have a ton of coaching experience, but mostly at the NBA level or the G League level. Any advice for that?
Well, I think the biggest key is just making sure you're up to speed on what's going on in our game and in our industry from a rule standpoint. Just knowing those ins and outs well, getting brushed up on them. I mean, if you can coach basketball, you can coach basketball. I don't think that's any kind of hindrance. But obviously the management and the organization and the detail that goes into that and just the nature of it is so different, when it comes to the pros. I mean, one of the things we're going through right now across the board is how do we re-enter athletes into this pandemic situation. And it's so very different for us in the college space than maybe it is for the NBA to figure that out. And it's the same type of analogy. So, just make sure that you're up to speed on dealing with those things, because I do think there is a certain uniqueness to our game. All these guys, that are doing it in college know this. There's a process and a uniqueness to how we have to do what we have to do. The little things you have to deal with when it comes to, NCAA compliance or whatever else it may be. And sometimes that can be a tough transition for someone who maybe hasn't had to worry about those kinds of details, or it was handled by someone else. So just make sure that bridge is crossed.
Yeah, the other thing, I agree with Matt. I think the two biggest things, one, compliance, right? I know some friends who I talk about some of the ways we're regulated. They're like, man, there's way too many rules in college, this and that. So I think familiarize yourself with the rules and what you can and can't do. And then, every coach is going to want to know how you recruit or who you can recruit or where you can recruit. So I think developing relationships with people whose players you may potentially recruit, and that may be internationally, places you've been, or even here locally or domestically, I should say. So, I think those are the two biggest things. It's the benefit of college that we get to choose our players, but with that, you have to start building a network too. So I think those two things would be the biggest things.
Awesome. So, well, guys, again, I appreciate everyone being on. Matt, obviously, it's kind of one of those, everyone's watching The Last Dance. Scottie Pippen comes up at game time and says he's not playing. So I thought you did really well with obviously what we had to deal with. So, but I appreciate you. And then obviously Amorrow, and Chris, really good job. And, if I can brag on Chris just for a second, literally, I had someone back out and called him 2 hours ago with the help of Russ Williamson. And he, he obviously agreed to do it. And obviously you can see, got as sharp as he could. So, Chris, I can't thank you enough. And obviously you and Amorrow did a really good job. And Matt and Adam for, doing the interview and then obviously moderating it. Can't thank you enough. And then obviously everyone that tuned in. I know you could be doing something else with your time, but I really appreciate you guys tuning in. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it and got something out of it. We'll be back again with our panel next week. I'm not sure on the time and date yet, but we'll be back next week. But thank you again to everyone that was participated and tuned in. And then obviously if you want to do the town hall tomorrow with Rising Coaches, Adam put that link in the chat box.
Thanks, David.
Thank you again, guys. Y'all have a great night.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Matt, thanks, David. Great job, Ro and Cap.
Good job, fellas.
Appreciate you guys.
It was fun.
Good job, fellas.